I am drinking a tea called Defense, a nice Twinings Defense. It's lemon and ginger. And as you can see, behind me is also Defense of the Neighbours. So, what I am going to be, I guess, reviewing, but it's not really a review. I think review is the wrong word. What I'm going to talk about are books in relation to the subject around them I find the most interesting rather than just reviewing the book. If you want a book review for Game of Thrones, which is what I'm going to talk about today, go to Goodreads, go to any number of essays on the book. Um, there are so many people who have already put their two pence in for this book that there really is no point. But what I am going to talk about is adaptations, which are so close that it might count as a reread. Okay, I know that sounds blasphemous. It sounds very anti-literary. Sounds like I'm breaking the conventions of all academic understanding. But I actually believe that Game of Thrones, which is very good by the way, um, it is a whopper of a book, as you can see, but it is very good. I would say that Martin writes dialogue like an absolute beast. His dialogue is incredible, and I think it's probably because he was a screenwriter before and cut his teeth on that. If you haven't looked up pictures of Martin when he was younger in that period, he looks like a Reddit mod, and it's very interesting how people can end up coming into a style that's like genuinely iconic. He has such an iconic style. Um, but anyway, the point is, uh, beyond my great praise for the dialogue and for the fact that it's incredibly readable, blink and 15 pages go by. Beyond all that, the thing that was in my brain while I was reading it was, this is just series one. This is I've watched series one uh three times, I think. I watched it once at uni, immediately convinced my uni housemates to watch it as well. And I told them, well, you go watch it and I will maybe pop in for the interesting bits. No, no, no. I was there for the whole thing. We binged it in a day. The first series, but I watched a lot of the rest with them anyway. And you just want to watch series one with them and get to that certain event, and see their reaction to it, and oh, it was absolutely worth it. And then I watched it again with my mum like last year, um, because she just said, oh, she thinks it's just gore and sex and what have you. And I said, well, they're certainly there, um, but they're not uncompelling. They're very good, and those things are not themselves a critique. So yeah, she got completely hooked as well. It is a genuine triumph. I was quite amazed on that third watch that she didn't have a problem with Series 8. I decided to let discourse stay out of it because I watched Game of Thrones knowing about Series 8 and knowing about Series 7 and 6 in a lot of people's view, 5 in some. And I went in with a total sort of pre understanding that it was going to go to the dogs, and so I watched it with this sort of rebellious, well, I'm going to try and like it, and I'm going to find the redeeming thing, and I'm going to be the guy that likes it, and everyone else be damned, because I quite like being a contrarian. I wonder if that will become obvious in these videos, but anyway, I just didn't really like it that much. It just tapers off. To me, it's not what everyone else says it is. It's not that there's these huge events that are just wrong. Like huge events are sort of what you want after eight series or something because you want things to wake you up a bit. You've invested many, many hours. Um, for example, the huge events of Series 6. are by far the highlights. They're the things that stand out. The Battle of the Bastards, for example, and I won't say what happens, but with the Sept, of Baelor, um, that stuff is it's just so good cinematically. And I say cinematically because it is at the scale of a film easily. The Battle of the Bastards is the best on-screen battle ever made by far. It's incredible. So, that stuff they were still able to pull out in Series 6, and Series 7 has some big set pieces as well. In the north, beyond the wall. Um, Again, I won't say because I'm reviewing the first book, so it's effectively the first series, and I don't even want to spoil the first book because what I'd like to talk about is uh actually I do want to spoil the first book, but I won't yet. But I will in the video, and I'll tell you when to click off. I just realised that the whole discussion sort of necessitates me spoiling it. Series 1, you discover as you read it, and I'm specifically talking about the order of events that you've watched the show first. And as I said 3 times, I'm very familiar with it. Um, you realize as you're reading it, I've read this dialogue before. Not I've seen these events before. No, 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 no. I've read these exact words before, and it's not like 1 or 2 lines. It's like nearly the whole scene, uh, almost the whole book seems to have been recreated for the screen. Um, Now there are a few parts of this that are not in the show, but they're extremely minimal. I mean, for example, Bran has a dream. It's very good actually. It's really well written. George is really pulling out his use of metaphor when it comes to dreams and things. That I find really interesting because I was thinking as I was reading, I was thinking, well, George is a fantastic storyteller, but he's not a great wordsmith in the very, very literary sense. Okay, because he is a great wordsmith in the sense of being able to produce what's in your brain on a piece of paper. Absolutely. Okay, so don't come after me about that. I'm definitely going to defend George's prose in that regard, but it's not purple, it's not flowery, and I know those are used as derogatives a lot of the time, but actually, if we're being honest, they're good things. When it comes to dream sequences, he actually is pretty good with metaphor and simile. Um, Maybe he doesn't go beyond those two, but why would you? I mean, they're thought of as the simplest because children at GCSE are taught them first. That's a pretty bad metric. You know, so what? They're the kings. That's why you learn them first. They're the kings and queen of the language features. He's pretty good. I wonder if I flick through if I could find any metaphors I underlined. As I flick through, I notice that I didn't know what a palanquin was. If you know, this will probably make you laugh. If you don't, this will teach you. It's this thing where these two stick figures here, as you can see, I'm a very good artist, are carrying somebody with sticks over their shoulders, and they're in a little sort of stick basket type thing in the middle. Presumably all sorts of cloths and silks and what have you inside this. They're probably quite rich if they're going about with that, but it's a mode of transport. Um, Pretty funny, pretty funny. I enjoyed learning about that. As you can see, if I don't know a word, I circle it, and what I end up doing is writing the definition at the top of the page. So then when I come back to it, well, firstly, because when you write something down, you're more likely to remember it, and I'm engaging with the word, which makes me much more likely to add it to my vocabulary. Secondly, I flick through sometimes those books and I look at the top of the pages and I wonder if I still remembered those words or not. I look at the circled words and I say, "Oh, do I remember that? Yeah, I do. Yeah." It's a fantastic way of increasing your vocabulary. It's well worth doing. Don't say to yourself, "Oh, this is going to slow me down." Why do it? No, there's every reason to do it. And do you know how satisfying it is when it comes back later in the book and you know exactly what it is? Do you know, I didn't know what portcullis was. I completely know what portcullis is now. It's like absolutely part of my vocabulary because he talks about them so many times. Um, and also this word here, which I actually don't know how it's pronounced, whether it's hummus or humus or humus, whatever, humus. I've just read as hummus, and it's tickled me so much. Um, really made me laugh. But it's basically soil. And anyone who sees this as a very obvious thing is going to be saying, "Yeah, duh." Um, but I looked it up. It actually the specific definition is what is very specific. Um, it satisfied me to just say it's soil, that it is a very specific, a very specific substance uh, in the soil grouping, I guess you might say. But that really, really tickled me. And apparently, hummus, the food, can also be spelt that way. You know, usually it's with two M's, but it was the second definition as well. So the one that made me laugh was 1,000 years of hummus lay thick upon the God's wood floor, which is actually pretty funny, swallowing the sound of her feet. But I've actually got a tear in my eye from that. You see that? Yeah, oh, it ran down to the nose. But yeah. Anyway, the point is, what I wanted to discuss is that the dialogue, like I say, is one to one. The descriptions, okay, maybe not one to one, but largely speaking, if you picture the settings in the show at the places where they say you are, you're on the money. It's all gonna make sense. Like what the moon door at the Erie is ever so slightly different. It's like positioned differently than it is in the show, and actually the journey to the Erie, I'm sure is different because Catelyn is like riding a donkey, uh, all the way like up a sheer mountain sort of thing, and then goes in a vegetable basket and is pulled up miles and miles. I think the height of the areas is actually portrayed better by this very, very long, difficult journey to get all the way up there. And it seems every time you get to what would be the precipice, there's actually another whole extra length that you've got to travel across. Um, so that was good, but I also know why they cut it. I mean, good lord, that sounds so expensive to do. That sounds just practically difficult. Whereas you can obviously give the illusion of height once you're actually just at the Erie. So yeah, that was good stuff. I'm trying to remember if spoiler now. I'll put this hand up whenever there's a spoiler. Okay. And I tell you what, when the hand is down, you can skip across. That means that I've stopped telling a spoiler. I'm gonna do it like this, where it's not quite like that because it feels weird on my fingers. So, at the very, very end, on the very last page, see, I told you it's gonna be a spoiler. The dragons are sucking Daenerys's nipples. They're breastfeeding from her. That was strange. It works. It obviously makes you wonder how it works practically. Um, that they can survive on human milk. Strange, but obviously, Mother of Dragons, it gets the image across very well. Um, but again, I think I know why they didn't do that. But again, there are a few lines that you think they also wouldn't cross, but they do. Um, oh, the biggest change, in my opinion, there's a very frustrating thing that happens in the show where Tyrion joins Tywin for his camp his camp um, to do battle against Robb Stark. Okay, that's a pretty pivotal moment. And in the show, for those of you who've watched it, you will know that someone rides along and just hits Tyrion by accident with something and just knocks him out. And when he wakes up, the battle is over and done with. And there are just corpses around. and everything's been done already. We saw nothing. Now, when I watched that, I said to myself, well, that seems like a interesting decision. We don't see the battle. It's obviously because we're building up to seeing battles, and they'll get there because I know that Game of Thrones has them, and it it fits Tyrion's character. It certainly does in a way. It's a little bit too comic, a little bit too convenient, but it does have a Tyrion quality to it that makes you sort of say, okay, I get why they did that. Um, but then when I watched some videos about Game of Thrones, I saw people saying, "Oh, well, that's budgetary restrictions, and they're cutting it, and it's because it'd be too expensive to film a battle, and Game of Thrones series one is just people talking because they don't have the budget to do anything else." And I thought to myself, well, have they read the books? Simply, does that happen in the books? Does it not? And I was keen to find out. And no, it doesn't happen. There is a full-on battle, and Tyrion does very well. He kills like three people in that battle. It's at least two, and like properly as well. You know, um, I think Tyrion gets these very convenient kills in the show, and he battles pretty properly. I mean, there is obviously a huge element to that to explain why this guy of his stature is able to fell these like warriors of ordinary height. Um, but the thing is, them cutting that uh, does mean that there is something else in here to enjoy that wasn't something you saw explicitly in the show, which is a very good thing. But they're few and far between. So the question is, does that mean that the book's worth reading for those extra things? That's question one. My answer would be no. My answer would be there's not enough in the in the book extra. There's a few dream sequences. There's that battle. Um, you know, There's a few more thoughts from the character. That doesn't make it worth it, and that's what people will say primarily. And I have seen them say it. They'll say, the point of view characters mean that you're in their head, you see their thoughts. Well, yeah, sort of. Um, you do kind of, but not in the way you're thinking. It's not in first person. Um, Martin claims that he's not there on the page, but he is. Um, it's not that every single line is the thought of a character. I don't buy that at all. There's a lot of that, and he does restrict it to only what the character can know. I think there is a couple of lines where I thought they don't know that they've left the room at that point, or something along those lines. There's been a couple, but it's very few. I mean, he does do a good job with this. It's definitely something he's thought about, um, but there's not a richness of thought there that is um so spelled out that you get anything new. I just don't buy this. There's a lot of new stuff because you get to hear the thoughts of the characters as well as their words. The argument is that the show has their words and the book has their thoughts as well, so it's doubled it if not tripled it because thoughts are more powerful. It's not true, and I'll tell you why it's not true. Because Game of Thrones, the show, is unbelievably well cast. It's as good a cast for any show as has ever been made or any film. Um, People who critique the characters are so much nitpicking. I saw a YouTube video that was like tier listing the Game of Thrones characters by comparing them to their book counterparts. And you know what that video had to do? That video had to just base it purely off appearance. Purely off appearance, not acting. You know why he had to do it that way? Because their acting is all phenomenal. They'd all be in the S tier. Okay. Um, and actually Sansa, who's someone that actually kind of annoyed me in the show, for several reasons. Um, I thought, she's not, yeah, she's just not great. And I thought, oh, I don't know. And I started to lay the blame at Sophie Turner's feet. You read the book, she's spot on. That's exactly what she's like. That's exactly what she's like. Yeah, I sort of need to issue an apology to Sophie Turner. Not that she's aware of either the fact that I ever said that or my existence. So I've ruled out the fact that there are enough new things to justify reading it. I've ruled out the idea that there's more uh, thought, because what my point was, which I realise I didn't sort of conclude, is that the acting is so good that you already know what the characters are thinking. Okay, acting at its absolute best means you can read the thoughts on the faces of the characters, right? Because they have so much embodied them that they actually look like they're thinking as well as saying, which sounds obvious, but God, that must be tricky to do, you know? To actually have a human being who reads and studies faces all day with their eyes and figuring out people's motives and things like that, and allegiances and emotions, to have someone be convinced that that person is thinking that thing even when they're not saying it, that's very good. So so there's not that extra dimension. I don't buy that there is. And then um the question then becomes, if they are so similar that you're basically getting the same experience to the point where I can't recommend you read this if you want new stuff, even though it's 780 pages long, my copy. What does that tell you? Well, I think that says that blasphemy incoming. I say that it counts as a reread to watch the show. I know, I know. It's never been posited before, I'm sure. I think everyone will race to say that's not true because they have a conclusion in their head already that it can't be that that's true. It's just so anti-book to say that. Book people would hate that. They will, they'll hate this. But you know what? I think it counts. Because if you're getting the same words, the same dialogue, you're getting the same thoughts by the acting's expression, you're getting the same settings, and you're getting the same order of events, how's that not the same thing? I've just said his prose isn't purple or flowery. Why is that significant? Because if it was, that would be the thing you get. It would be an extremely literary phenomena that uh, cannot be ever extracted onto a screen. You can't extract William Faulkner as William Faulkner. You can't extract James Joyce as James Joyce. You can extract this. You can see how they made a TV show out of it. You can see how they wanted to make a movie out of it. It is just crying out to be adapted because there's no challenges, there's no obstacles in what's on the page to an adaptation. There is nothing that can't be adapted about it. So yeah, what do you think? Do you think that you can watch a show if it's one to one, if an adaptation is one to one, pretty much? Do you think that that counts as a reread? It felt like watching the show. Everything I pictured that was in the book was the show. I feel truly like I just watched series one for the fourth time. Now, obviously, what I'm doing is I'm giving the book preference because it is the original. So what that means is you could say you've read the book four times, and that works just as well as saying you've watched the show four times on a practical level. But what sounds better? Sounds better to say you read the book four times. But I'm not actually sanctioning that idea that you should say you've read the book four times if you watch the show four times. But the experience is exactly the same. The experience is the same. So practically, you have done. Now, what I would love to know is anyone who read the book first, what their experience was of it when they watched the show. To me, that's the more interesting way around because that would be mind blowing. Because this is why that's so important. When you read this, you would have pictured it with your own characters in mind. And yes, they would have been saying the same things and thinking the same things, but they would have had a very different look and what have you. So then when you watch the show, um, I very, very much wonder if you went back to the book, did the show's character did the book's characters that you pictured remain your mental image of them, or did the show dilute it? So when you hear the name Jamie Lannister, you can only see the Jamie Lannister of the show. Can't remember the actor's name. Nikolai Coster-Waldau, I believe. So when you watch that, has did that replace what the book gave you? No offense to the books, you got what you wanted. You got exactly what you wanted. You got exactly what you wanted. And maybe you thought, well, I remember that this bit was a little bit more grand, the journey to the Eyrie. I remember Bran dreaming that he could fly and meeting the three-eyed raven way before that. And, I remember there being more stuff with Renly, and I remember there being, um, you know, I guess a little bit more Littlefinger stuff and um I remember Tyrion's battle, but come on. If you complained when that came out, adapting your favorite book, you are a tough person to please, because they did a phenomenal job. The last thing I'll say is I keep saying they do a phenomenal job. I'd like to extract from this. People go on about David and Dan, D&D, as like they're the Antichrist. How could George have trusted them? He must have seen it coming. They ignored him. They butchered his legacy. They've ruined thrones for everyone. Um, that My God, they are the two biggest idiots. They're the worst thing that's ever happened to screenwriting. I'm so glad they failed to make their Star Wars trilogy. Guys, your favorite thing, the series 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, whatever your favorite part is, it will be in that section. They made that as well. Why does everyone lay that solely at George's door? Is it because, as I've posited, they're so one-to-one that they just adapted everything? That's still no mean feat. They did a great job. They did a phenomenal job, and they followed it to the letter. And that not following to the letter is what got the show in trouble later when there were no books. They clearly were wanting to follow to the letter when it came to adapting what they did have. Now I am aware that later books delineate more from the show, or rather, the show delineates more from the books. Um, that excites me. I don't know whether that's a mistake from the show. I don't know if I'm going to think, "Whoa, that's way better in the books." I don't know. I'm not there yet, but I'm excited about it because although I enjoyed this, as I've just said, it did feel like the fourth time experiencing something I've already experienced 3 times. I can't wait to read. I think it's Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons that delineate the most, and I can't wait to read something that's substantially different, but still in that fantastic world and with those fantastic characters.